Without having these types of opportunities for performance, students are only hearing their pieces electronically. And while it's great that we have these tools that allow us to listen to the music that we're composing, it's not the same as having musicians take your score and then translate that back into sound. So it's a really important and vital part of the composition process. It's really an eye-opening experience, and that's what it's all about, is translating this back into sound.
Welcome to Pilot Projects, Stories from the Jefferson Trust, brought to you by the Sound on Grounds team at the University of Virginia Library. I'm Jason Evans-Groth. I started playing saxophone when I was 9 years old. I chose saxophone because, to me, the saxophone could make sounds that were as close to the distorted electric guitar sounds I loved in rock music as I thought my parents would let me have. Also, my small school's band didn't have electric guitars in it, so it was really the only choice if I wanted to make sounds like that. I grew up on a diet of old rock and roll and current pop music. The sounds the sax makes at the beginning of The Twist by Chubby Checker, or in the solo from Tutti Frutti by Little Richard, or as part of the horn section and solo in George Harrison's cover of Got My Mind Set on You. Were so exciting to me, as dirty and rebellious as the soaring guitar solo sounds I was hearing in songs my parents liked, like Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac. Or songs that I liked, like Just What I Needed by The Cars. As it turned out, playing saxophone in school band never let me really make those sounds. But I loved it anyway, and found my way to composers who incorporated saxophone in the more classical tradition, like Percy Grainger. And eventually, Frank Zappa. But playing in large ensembles had its challenges, especially in school. While I was dedicated to music, felt my life was leading to a career playing it, I was at the mercy of the sometimes dozens of others in ensembles with me, who often did not have the same feeling. We would play maybe 4 concerts a year, and not only did I want to perform more, I wanted to write. I tried to compose a few pieces for smaller ensembles, but never had the chance to hear them played. I never actually got to hear any of those sounds that I was hearing in my head, played by real musicians. So in high school, I started playing guitar and put together a 3-piece rock band. It was so much easier to compose pop and rock songs that I could actually perform, could hear live, and could record more easily and share, including recording outside of traditional studios, like in my bedroom. She's a flying and eating and flying and landing and eating and flying and landing. She's a flying. I felt compelled to share because I was inspired by so many other musicians sharing the sounds they heard. Music changed my life, and I wanted to contribute too. Rock music was my way to do that. And it did become a career for me in bands like Magnolia Electric Company. I think largely because I had found a place to actively write and share my music, where I could hear it come alive, learn from the performances, make it better each time with fewer venue and rehearsal restrictions. But I've often wondered if my musical path would have been different had I been given the opportunity to hear my ambitious young compositions for larger, more classical instrumentation played in venues by the musicians I imagined would be the ones playing them, to bring to life the sounds I heard in my head when writing pieces for saxophone, French horn, clarinet, piano, and percussion. Sarah Bastinelli and I on the Sound on Grounds team were excited to meet a faculty member at UVA who wondered the same thing. What happens when young composers are given the opportunity to hear the music they're writing played by an ensemble of professional musicians, given the time and space to refine that music with collaborators, and then hear it performed live in a beautiful venue in front of an audience? I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Leah Reid. I'm an assistant professor of music composition and computer technologies at the University of Virginia. I'm also a composer of acoustic and electronic music.
Leah was invested enough in the idea that young composers needed a place to showcase their music that she went to the Jefferson Trust to find a way to make it happen at UVA.
My Jefferson Trust project has to do with a composer concert series and performance series, and it's an inaugural series where over 3 years, I'm creating a series of concerts and performance opportunities for students at the University of Virginia.
We asked about how the inaugural spring 2025 performance went.
So we had our first inaugural concert this past spring, and we had 17 world premieres by undergraduate composers with 10 composers that were represented, and it was a resounding success. They had professional recording, and everyone did beautiful work. Our next one is planned for April 4th of next spring, and we're just in the preliminary stages of planning out performers and starting to get it organized. We had a huge crowd and people were really excited. The students really didn't have that many opportunities to have their works presented and professionally performed by faculty musicians or have a venue really to present all the great things that they had been working on. So it was really wonderful to present this group of fantastic pieces in Old Cabell Hall.
Old Cabell Hall is UVA's principal lecture and concert hall, and it hosts over 200 events each year and can seat almost 900 people.
Parents came, a lot of members from the community came, and it was just a wonderfully supportive event, and all the pieces just were so stunningly beautiful. I'm very proud that we were able to pull this off in the first year.
The Student Composers event features new compositions by undergraduates, played by faculty musicians and others. We asked how the students got connected to the musicians who would bring their compositions to life.
So most of the students were enrolled in one of my intermediate or advanced composition classes, but some students were also distinguished majors, so they were completing projects for the music department in composition. And so there was a faculty quartet that consisted of violin, viola, clarinet, and piano. So violin, we had Professor David Ceriti. On viola, we had Professor Ann Balia. On clarinet, we had Professor Jun Choi, and then on piano, we had Professor John Mayhood. And so a lot of the students composed specifically for this ensemble, but others composed different works for different instrumentation, and then they brought their own performers as well. So we had a student choir conducted by the composer herself. And so she organized the amazing performers, most of which were part of the university singers. And there was also a fantastic brass quintet, and the composer played alongside with the fellow performers. And it was all about climate. There's a lot of scientific data. So it was part of her DMP project, which was very exciting.
DMP stands for the Distinguished Majors Program, which allows students to really dive deeply into a specific area of study.
Can you talk a little bit more about that specific project? That sounds really cool. How did they integrate climate change into it?
It was all different data that surrounded these birds and migratory patterns. And there was different pauses in the music where there was a speaker that helped introduce some of the content.
Starvation strandings are becoming more common as the oceans warm and the fish that lure prey on decline. Listen for the sonification of these strandings in the winter section of this piece, with more notes in a measure meaning more stranded birds in a year. And welcome to the Wadden Sea.
She she had spent the course of a year collecting this different data for the project, and then it was sonified material that she then translated into sound.
Leah is talking about data sonification, which is similar to data visualization, except it takes data and turns it into sound information.
Are there any other specific performances that you would like to highlight that you thought were really cool?
Yeah, there was another piece that had to deal with, it was a children's song that was just electronic, but it was beautifully done. It was electronics with a full orchestral texture that ended up dealing with hydrogen. And it's meant to be a children's song to help children learn more about the properties of hydrogen. And it was really fun.
I am truly the most important element of all. I'll keep on glowing. My journey's just begun. For I am one, just one, and what fun. Luck and acid, a base, the molecules changing.
We had another distinguished major project that was a beautiful quartet that featured the full faculty ensemble by Hunter Colson. That was a 2-movement piece that was really inspired by Brahms and Romantic composers. It was just absolutely stunning that finished off the concert.
You mentioned that there were 17 world premieres. What does that mean?
The students had the opportunity to work with all of the performers, and this was all music that had never been heard before by the public or by the composers. So we workshopped the pieces. There was a lot of working with the performers directly and deciding, oh, this works, this doesn't work, let's find this, this wasn't clear in the score, or let's try something else out. So the students had a real opportunity to have a real world experience of working with professional musicians and then having it go all the way through the concert hall. It's rapid iterations of making a lot of corrections and quick decisions and figuring out what works. And they all did a marvelous job, and the pieces really came out great.
Am I correct in understanding that this is a part of performing the art that they've composed, that they're able to make all these changes that they would have noticed if they had just written the piece?
Without having these types of opportunities for performance, students are working with MIDI, or they're only hearing their pieces electronically.
MIDI, M-I-D-I, stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's a protocol that's been around for over 40 years, and it allows composers to write music in electronic domains and hear their compositions instantly. As Leah explains, it's great for lots of applications, but even 40 years later, does not always accurately portray what a composer intends.
And while it's great that we have these tools that allow us to listen to the music that we're composing, it's not the same as having musicians take your score and then translate that back into sound. It's a wildly different process, and MIDI just doesn't do the different subtle techniques or timbres that real performers can do. It's really an eye-opening experience, and that's what it's all about, is translating this back into sound. And so sometimes things like electronic renditions are often way too fast. And so then when you hear it, it sounds like it's a hyper, it's sped up. But in real life, you want it to breathe, you want it to live. And so you need to take a little bit more time. You want to experiment with the various colors. And these are things that you just can't do by just listening to the rendition that comes out of the software. So it's a really important and vital part of the composition process.
But as their professor, was it exciting to see that they could have their work finally performed by real people?
We often have workshops and other types of things in the department, but it's very special, this project, and what the Jefferson Trust allowed us to do, to be able to really not only have this concert in such a special place as Old Cabell Hall, but have their works professionally recorded, both video and audio, so they can put these types of recordings in their portfolio and then be presenting it and sending it off for competitions or for other opportunities. If you just send a MIDI rendition, it's very unlikely that you're going to have success because people are looking for these types of recordings. There's a bias in the field for having recordings, and especially having good recordings is only going to help. So I was very happy and proud that we were able to put this together, and the students couldn't have been more thrilled with the results.
Us as audio people definitely understand the power of a good recording.
This is so exciting to me because working in the media center, one of our goals is not just to fetishize technology. Anyone can learn how to use software or hardware. There's documentation for that. But the real art is the human that interacts with the recording software or whatnot so that the work, the content can be showcased. So I'm super interested in the fact that this is really, to me, a grant about having students vulnerably showcase their work in a way that they can't otherwise. And given the constraints of this style of music, how do you think that we as faculty can help propagate that kind of showcasing?
This is something that the music department is very supportive of and recognize how important and valuable this experience is for students. The goal is that by having this initial grant cycle funded by the Jefferson Trust, that we'll be able to continue this initiative moving forward. So I'm very excited to see this continue. We've had other opportunities in the past and other concerts, but it's not been something that's been able to be planned quite so far in advance. So it's very exciting that we have this round of funding where, it's not last minute putting things together. It's really being able to work on this in advance so that we can secure performers that are interested and the venues and get everything lined up so that it's really a wonderful experience for the students. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to continue this. That's the idea and that's the goal. And at the music department, we're working to make that a reality.
Live performance of compositions like this is only a thing that happens once in a particular room with a particular set of listeners. I wonder how the need for students to be able to interact with their compositions through performers performing them through those iterations. How do you think that story can be told to help people understand both the benefits and drawbacks of just assuming that things like AI and electronic composition will do the work for them?
Actually, one of the pieces on the program did use AI. So it used AI as the voice in the hydrogen piece was an AI voice model. And it was a beautiful rendition of this collaborative piece between the composer and their computer. And so all of the materials generated, they were electronic sounds.
Oh, I find myself in places strange and grand, in the rain that falls in rivers and oceans. A bound here, a spark there, everywhere I turn, a little piece of me.
But he did such a beautiful job of making it very lifelike. And it was really, in this case, AI was this collaborator that he was working with. It wasn't generating materials for him. It was something that was helping augment and create something, this special voice that had a very Disney-esque character that was very special that he was able to be working with. And I think AI in general can be a very powerful tool. I teach both acoustic and electronic composition. I think the possibilities of AI are wonderful, and using the tools. We've had electronic tools and algorithmic composition and all these types of things for a very long time. And so AI is becoming a buzzword, and it's increasing in popularity, especially in the electronic music sector. I was just at the International Computer Music Conference where I presented a piece, and half of the conference was about using AI, which is very exciting. And I think, utilizing some of these things to be a collaborator and to help us create more interesting types of material is wonderful. But in the end, it still can't replace what, a human interaction can have. And so while we can use AI to help with our creative process or to be a sounding board or to be an assistant, I think that it still can't replace working with real performers and having these types of sounds interact with actual physical spaces. So whether you're composing electronic music or you're composing acoustic music, actually presenting two people in a space, it's a very powerful experience that can't be recreated with just having, a piece and just having a recording and then playing for someone on SoundCloud or YouTube. Well, it's great to be able to present one's work in digital formats that way. It's really different to have a sound projected into a space or to be able to play it, hear the acoustics of that space and how the sounds are resonating off the walls, see the reactions of the different people that are in the audience, be able to manipulate the sound and play with room tones and all the different types of things that come up with working with technology or live performers. There's a lot that really needs to be adjusted. And you can't experience this with just releasing things online. So it's a powerful type of experience that grounds us in real physical experience. And I think that we can't recreate that in any other way. It has to be in a concert hall, and no matter what type of medium it is, whether it's electronic or with live performers.
My concern is that the story isn't being framed as this is a tool, just like MIDI is. It is a tool that can help conceptualize and can be integrated. And in lots of ways, we in media encourage using tools to open the door of thought and creativity, because sometimes having something programmed to give you a different idea, that collaboration is super special. Like, it's something that can help us in ways when we can't be in a room with 19 other performers, and we can at least get an idea down and then present it to that room of 19 other performers to try and get those iterations started. I think it's a really interesting place we're in to not just be against Gen AI or for it completely. It's hard, I think, in media to just say, well, there's somewhere in the middle that like is actually really interesting and helpful for the creative process, and using it as that tool to like spark creativity is sort of where we fall. And it sounds like that you fall that way too.
Absolutely. I think whatever tools that we can have at our disposal to help with creativity is really marvelous. One of the other pieces that was featured on the concert was film scoring, a rescore of this caribou scene from Netflix series. And it was a full new orchestral score that was presented at the concert as well. And the piece used quite a bit of electronic renditions of instruments, but they were really beautifully crafted by the composer to create something that sounded so realistic to an orchestra. And we worked very hard to work with that. And he also worked with UVA faculty for recordings that he integrated as part. So he was blending electronics with the acoustic types of materials, and the piece was just stunning. Again, it was a very different experience. We listened to this piece many times in class and critiqued it, and we had a little class concert at the end of one of the semesters. But hearing it in Old Cabell Hall in the space and having it projected in that large venue and played over the large speakers that we have in there and whatnot, it was a completely different experience for the composer as well to have this screening and to really be able to present his work that way. And it was really beautiful to hear it in a new venue and space. The piece had completely transformed, which I think is interesting too, just how even pieces that are designed that way, how it really does transform in a concert hall. I know for my own work, I compose a lot of electronic music specifically for loudspeakers, and it's very different each space that you're working in.
We asked Leah to tell us more about the classes she teaches and how those classes help prepare the students for performances like the Undergraduate Composers Concert.
So Composition 1 and 2, they're both project-based classes, so students work one-on-one with me. And we have a series of individual lessons that happen throughout the semester and group sessions where the students are presenting and getting feedback from their classmates. It's really about their process and establishing a composition process where they can thrive and grow. So wherever they're at, they bring their projects and ideas, and I help workshop into something that they can be putting together for the end of the semester. And it's really about each week showing a little bit of progress, showing new ideas, research that they've done into the concepts or techniques or instrumentation. And listening is a big part of it. So the students listen to and do research papers on various pieces to prepare so that they can learn more about other pieces in the field before they're composing their own works. And then, we have instrument demonstrations so that they're learning about specific instruments that they may be composing for. And then they're presenting and getting feedback from everyone in the group. And whatever they need to learn is what I teach throughout the semester. So sometimes it's people want to learn more about the ARP synthesizer, which is a fantastic fancy synthesizer we have in the VCCM.
The VCCM is the Virginia Center for Computer Music, a state-of-the-art lab and the primary studio for computer music teaching at UVA.
Other times they want to be working in surround sound, so I'll teach them how to compose in surround. Other times it's a specific composition technique that will go into more detail. So it's really open to the students that are enrolled in the course, and that's how I design it. And then at the end of the semester, there's a series of listening opportunities to hear the works, both in an insulated format for just the class, and in this case, in the larger community as well. So the students that were enrolled in this last semester in Composition 2, they not only had the Undergraduate Composers Concert that they were able to present their work at, but students working with electronic media could also present their pieces at Digitalis, which is a festival that we put on in the music department each year. And there was also an in-class concert where they weren't ready to present everything just to the public, but they wanted to present it to their classmates, which was very special. So these were albums and types of things that are coming out that weren't quite ready to be shared with the world just yet, but that were ready for a little bit additional feedback with the classmates. There were a lot of opportunities, and with Digitalis, it was wonderful. One of the students put on this full orchestral composition with electronics. Another one presented their surround sound composition they'd been working on for an entire year and quite a bit more. So it was very exciting. There's requirements in terms of the end about producing a project. So we work towards meeting those specific requirements in terms of length of piece, the ambition of the project. And so it's really tailored to specifics of what the student is interested in doing. So that might be finishing a full album worth of works to release online. For other students, it was composing their DMP project, which was a couple of movements of a composition. For others, it was a series of miniatures for a duo, or for others, it was working on with electronic equipment and creating a new type of instrument and creating a composition based off of that. It's really students with whatever they're interested in that have some skills in composition, they're able to continue and really work on a large-scale project and see it through to completion.
We asked Leah how students who wish to be part of the Undergraduate Composers Concert could get involved for 2026, and if she'd be teaching these composition classes again in the next school year.
So hopefully next year we will have a more open call. So there was the call within the music department for this concert, but next year I'm hoping that we'll be able to release it for music majors, that they can be submitting to all this. So it doesn't have to just be through my courses, although there is a direct pipeline because I can already see what people are working on. But it will be offered in the spring, so Composition 2 will be offered this following spring. I will be on leave in the fall, so unfortunately it will not be offered in the fall, but it will be in the spring.
Pilot Projects, Stories from the Jefferson Trust, is a Sound on Grounds podcast. Sound on Grounds is sponsored by a Jefferson Trust grant, as are all the projects featured in this season of Pilot Projects. You can find more Sound on Grounds podcasts at www.virginiaaudio.com/soundongrounds. Today's episode was engineered and recorded by Sarah Bastinelli in the Robertson Media Center audio studio. It was written and edited by Sarah and me, Jason Evans Groth. The Pilot Project's show cover was designed by UVA alum Karina Valachi. This episode features music from Chubby Checker, Little Richard, George Harrison, Fleetwood Mac, The Cars, Cadmium Orange, Magnolia Electric Company, and Frank Zappa. We heard Percy Granger's Lisbon performed by the U.S. Army Field Band. We heard the student compositions Wadden C, an ecoacoustic composition for brass quintet and speaker by Hannah Martin, Hydrogen by Eduardo Hinckley, Quartet in A minor movements 1 and 2 by Hunter Colson, and a rescore for Caribou by Jeremy Chase. Original music outside of the student compositions used in this episode was written and recorded by me, Jason Evans Groth, in the Robertson Media Center audio studio. Thanks again to Professor Leah Reid for sharing her story with us.